Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody in Baltimore, our fans, for their support, and especially for the people that have helped us, the coaches and the scouts. It's been huge this year. David McDonald, especially for me, and a lot of other people as well. So it's a long day. It's been a long month, but I think this is the start of something special. And we're excited to get Patrick Queen to Baltimore. First LSU pick. It only took 25 years or so to do that, but he's a guy that really fits us. He's an explosive player, sideline to sideline. I think he's equally adept in coverage and also against the run. He's a good blitzer. He's a guy that plays like a Raven. He's a guy that when you watch the tape, you notice him, and he's a great fit for our defense. I think he's a great fit for Baltimore, and we're very excited about him.
All right, thanks, Eric. Why don't we start with Dave Ginsburg, and then you guys can roll from there. You there, Dave? Dave Ginsburg. All right, Jeff Zrebeck.
Eric, waiting and Kenneth Murray goes off, I guess not too long before your pick. Another inside linebacker goes off. What was it like? Were there some nervous moments there? I know you guys, I'm sure, had other guys you liked too, but were there some nervous moments that Patrick may not get to you guys?
Well, you're always nervous, Jeff. It's like not unlike any other draft. You start to see the players that you covet start to just fall off the board, and you do get a little bit nervous. I spent some time on the phone with John and spent some time on the phone with Steve and with Ozzie and Joe talking about different situations. And I feel like we had a really good plan. This year, the players, we had, 3 or 4 guys that we felt like had a chance to realistically be there for us. Fortunately, we had a couple different options. Unlike the last couple of years, our phone didn't ring quite as much. We had a couple of phone calls, but nothing that got really close to making a trade. And of course, we always embrace the opportunity to move around the board a little bit. So that didn't really happen. And fortunately, we were able to get a guy that we feel really, really about this year. So, we feel like we got better.
Guys, there's no lineup here for the questions. You can just go ahead and ask.
Eric, this is Jameson from ESPN. Were any thoughts about moving up in this draft, and were you concerned? It seemed like Patrick Queen was linked to New Orleans an awful lot. Were you concerned that he wasn't going to get past New Orleans?
Well, you're always concerned. I mean, we create so many different conspiracies in our heads leading up to our pick, and this team's going to take him. This team's going to take him. This team's going to take him. We did look at potentially trading up a couple times. It's not something that we love to do because we love draft picks, but there were a couple situations we made some phone calls. Again, they didn't really, come to anything, obviously. You're always concerned. I mean, I got a nice text from Mike Nolan who liked our pick. Other teams seem to like the player, which is always kind of cool after the fact, You get some texts from different people and guys say, oh, that's a great pick or whatever it is. That makes you feel really good. And I think this guy just really fits us. I think our coaches are really excited, and I think he's going to be a great teammate. He comes from a championship program, really kind of embodies, what we're all about. So he makes us so fast, and I think he's going to be great behind those guys that we added this year. So he just, it fell the right way. We had, as I said, 4 or 5 guys, and around pick 20, we started feeling pretty good. I started feeling pretty good that we were going to get one of the guys that we liked, and it worked out that way for us.
John, Dave Ginsburg, just curious, you saw Ray Lewis play a lot of ball. I'm not saying that Patrick Queen is yet in that mold yet, but do you see the potential there? And obviously this was a need pick. You guys needed someone in the middle of the defense.
Yeah, I mean, not really making comparisons, just looking at Patrick for who he is as a player. He really is legit. I mean, he's a young guy coming on, he's a first-year starter there. He's coming from a small high school, played running back in high school, started making the calls toward the end of the year. I mean, his best football is in front of him, and he's got some really good tape behind him this year. So we feel like he's really a riser, plays fast, like Eric said, great blitzer. Real man coverage guy, learning how to play zone coverages. They play a pretty complex system there at LSU. We know they're skiing very well. So, yeah, it's exciting. I think he's a great fit for us. I thought Eric did a great job managing this thing, and the scouts did a tremendous job, and the coaches just set this thing up. And for us to come away with Patrick Queen is a big win.
I'm Jimena Lugo La Torre from Ravens Spanish Radio, and this question is for Eric DeCosta, Coach John Harbaugh, and Joey Hortiz. At one point during the college season, did you notice Patrick Queen as a potential pick for the Ravens?
Joe, you can go ahead and talk to that one.
Yeah, with Patrick, he's an interesting guy because he's he was an underclassman that, again, his first year starter. So you don't go in there asking questions about him. But as our scouts went in, they just couldn't help but notice number 8 flying around the field and running by people, making plays. So he's a guy about mid-year started getting on our radar in terms of our scouts going in there and having strong feel for him, and just kind of started putting him through the process from there, and finished up with him as a Raven.
Eric, hey, this is Pete Gilbert. Congratulations on getting through the virtual draft, your first one. And, I'm curious, with a guy who just didn't have the amount of tape of, like, say, someone of Murray at Oklahoma did, how much do you weigh that versus, when you can watch, and the tape that you have is good, but there isn't a ton of it. What's the balance there in trying to evaluate?
Well, you base it on your experience, and you base it on your eyes, and you base it on what you see. And so I think, we watched him in really big games against great opponents. We saw him play Georgia. We saw him play against Alabama. We saw him play against Oklahoma. We saw him play against Clemson. Those are some of the very best teams in college football, and he was one of the very best guys on the field in those games. So, I think that as you gain experience as a scout and as an evaluator, you get better at your job, and you're looking for specific things. And when you see it, you saw it, and that kind of makes your decision easy. So I think with Patrick, there's a lot of different qualities about him that really jump off the tape. And you see a guy like that, and, it was kind of a no-brainer for us. I mean, I think that somebody said, maybe Dave said, it was a need pick. And I think sometimes when you say a need pick, there's an implication maybe that you reached a little bit or took him a little bit higher than you would have, except for the fact that it was a need. And I think in this case, what was great about Patrick is not only was he a need, meaning we need an inside linebacker, but he was also very much the very best player on the board at that time for us. And so when that happens, I think it's a great win for the organization and hopefully for our fans as well.
Eric, Bo Smolka calling. I'm curious if you could kind of go through this night and doing the draft this way. What were the biggest difficulties for you, right? You're not all together in the war room and all that. What was the toughest thing for you in terms of doing this draft this way tonight?
Obviously, I mean, these guys are my best friends that I work with, and not being with these guys on such a special night is, it's a different experience, but we're together sort of, virtually. I think from a challenge standpoint, I have a camera over here that is a NFL camera and an ESPN camera that's on all the time. So that's challenging for 4 or 5 hours at a time to have a camera just running and running and running and running. It can be a little bit unsettling, I think. So that was a challenge. Not having we were fortunate, actually, I should say, because we eat really well at the draft. I mean, we really do. I mean, Steve Bisciotti really feeds us well. But I got to say, we stepped it up this year, and, we had Jimmy Seafood, and it was awesome. And so I did get well fed, so I can't really complain about the food. I thought the food was going to be an issue, but it wasn't an issue. It was actually pretty good. We traded up, I think. So that was awesome.
Hey guys, Childs Walker with the Baltimore Sun. This is for both Eric and John. You guys have kind of already alluded to the fact that Patrick Queen didn't come into this year with a guaranteed starting role. Did the way he handled that kind of strike you as you looked at his bio? And then were there any other things about his bio or his personal qualities that particularly connected with you guys?
Go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, I would let Eric and Joe talk about the background and stuff. I just, I mean, everything's positive there, very positive. Especially his, how far he's come as a football player. He's really a riser, but the tape, I mean, that's all you really had to do is watch the tape. And that's what, as a coach and our coaches do, we after the season, scouts do a great job of looking at the background that you're talking about, Childs, and figuring all that out and kind of setting the guys up. Then we look at the tape and see how they fit. The tape he jumped off the tape. I mean, he's flying around making plays, and the fact that he is such a young player, and like you said, was new to the position, because I mean LSU's got some pretty good players. It's not like, year in and year out, it's not easy to go in there and start. And he worked his way into that lineup, and he's still very young, but he played great football. He's flying around in the biggest games against the best teams, making play after play. That's what I saw, and really that's what mattered to me.
Yeah, and I would say that, he's not a guy that I think it's interesting. He's not an entitled guy. This is a guy that didn't start for most of his career at LSU. And so I think his transition to the NFL, that's going to help him, I think, because it's a difference coming up to this level of football with really good players at every single position. It can be a challenge for some guys. And I think Patrick's already kind of undergone that challenge in some respects, and he's thrived at the end. And so, I think we're excited. I should also say that we've got really, really good contacts at that school. Joe has great contacts at LSU. Our scouts have great contacts at LSU. I feel like personally we get the very best information about prospects at that school. So that helps us in our decision making. It hasn't helped us draft players, but it's helped us understand these guys and know these players as people. And I think in that realm, I think Patrick really fares well.
Hey, Eric, this is Garrett Downing. I'm asking a question on behalf of a fan who's watching on as part of the Ravens virtual draft experience. His name is Brandon Vega. And his question is, what do you see as your priorities for day 2 in the 2nd and 3rd rounds?
Well, I think it's wide open. We've got 4 picks in the next day, and we're excited about that. It's a tremendous opportunity for the club. And I think John and I and Ozzie and Joe and Wink and Greg Roman and everybody else, we see great potential to improve the team. And I love the board. I love the players available. I think you've got some offensive linemen that we like. I think there's some receivers and defensive linemen that we like. Kind of slotted running backs. I think it's a strong group available. So, we'll reassess the board. I mean, I've kind of looked at it already, and I'll do that when I get off this call, but there's like 25 or 30 players right now that I think can really contribute right away for us next year. And we're going to get 2 of those guys. So provided I can do a good job and we're right in our assessment on these players, which I believe we are, there's no reason why we can't have a slam dunk day tomorrow.
Hey, Eric, it's Ryan Mink. You mentioned, it's a bummer not to be with your coworkers that you're usually with at the draft, but it looked like you had your family in there with you. How special is that in the first round of the NFL draft to have your family in the room with you?
It was cool. I have to say, it's one of these things, probably never have it again. So it's a special thing. It's a special moment. And in some ways, I remember when I went to the Super Bowl in 2000 thinking to myself, I better really enjoy this because I'll probably never have this again professionally. And obviously, we have, but I got to say, I don't think I'll ever experience another draft like this. And so it's been really fun for my 2 sons and my daughter to be with me. To be honest with you, that's one of the best things about the last month. It's just the time that I've been able to spend as a father with these guys. And so, it was cool. I had to tell them to be quiet a couple times, but, it's really a blessing, and I'll never forget it.
Joe, this is Jeff Srebeck. I'm not expecting you to tell us where they ranked on your board, but was it a situation with Murray and Queen where it's just you loved them both and it was just you'd have been happy to get either one of them?
I'd say that's pretty a fair assessment. I actually personally watched both those guys back to back in it was in January, and just you get excited watching one, and then you throw the film in on the other one, and you're just as excited. I mean, like they're both really just extremely athletic, fast, competitive guys that, like John had mentioned and Eric mentioned, they show up. That you don't have to look for them. They show you where they're at, and I think both those guys are that way, and I think they're both going to be playmakers and play the same way when they get into the NFL. They have really good motors, and they're really athletic, and they play like they love football. And so it was a challenge in evaluating both those guys, but you knew whichever one, if you had a chance to get either one, you're going to get a good football player.
Hey, Joe and Eric, this is Jonas Schaefer with the Baltimore Sun. For either of you guys, obviously the emphasis in the NFL right now is just on the passing game. How much, if at all, has your evaluation of linebackers changed with respect to how much you value guys who can play in coverage like Patrick Queen can?
Go ahead, Joe.
I'll say this: like a guy like Patrick, sure, it's very valuable. And when you see a guy that you feel like can play all three downs and help us, like Eric said, he can cover, he can blitz, he can do a lot of different things with the pass. That is a huge piece to have. But I'll say this and recognize our defensive staff. They can take guys and find roles for them to help us on defense. And I thought they did an outstanding job. It was awesome watching them last year. And it really gives you flexibility as a scout to say, hey, he may not be this good at this particular area, but I think I can see our coaches using the guy this way. So I don't think it's certainly a deal breaker with the inside linebacker position. You find what he can do for your defense, and you marry it up with what the coaches want. And it makes it easy to scout for our defense because our coaches are so versatile with their players.
There were some plays, I think, in that game against either Oklahoma or Clemson where he was covering, he was wide receivers up the seam to that deep middle field. I mean, how rare quality is to have a linebacker who can do that?
I mean, I'd say it's rare when you got a guy running up the seam and running into the post with a wide out, a slot wide out. That's a hard thing to do. But when you get down, put your hand down and run 4.45, you got a shot to do those things. So he certainly has the speed to do that. And I don't know if you're going to want to match him up with wideouts all the time. I don't know if there's any linebacker out there in the NFL even that you want to put on a wideout all the time. But I'm sure our coaches will find ways to use them doing things like that.
Eric, this is Jeff again. I kind of have to ask the low-hanging fruit question. What was Ozzie Newsome's reaction when you guys were talking about finally taking the LSU player?
Well, he kept saying something, but we muted him. We wanted to mute him, and he kept waving his hands, and then the video went out. So, that's the thing with technology. Sometimes it can be manipulated, and I think, it was the Russians. I don't really know, but it happened, and we just turned the pick in.
Hey, John, this is Jameson. You did a great job last year in rotating on the in the middle with those guys. How much of a luxury and how much does it help when you have a player like Queen, who is a guy that doesn't have to be, he's a 3-down player. He doesn't have to be taken off the field.
Yeah, I see your point. He'll definitely be playing for 3 downs, but where he's playing will kind of be right up our alley. It's not like we're going to change our personality that way. He can play a lot of different spots, and we can line him up on the edge. We can line up on the edge and take a back or blitz or drop zone coverage, or as I think Jeff pointed out, drop him to the deep middle of the field if we want. I mean, we have that defense too. So he's going to be versatile for us. He can cover backs, move guys around. We play him in different spots. We give him different job titles and responsibilities, pretty much every single different call. So I'm excited about that. Very versatile, skill set, perfect fit for us.
Hey guys, it's Ryan Mink again. We already kind of talked about Kenneth Murray and seeing him go off the board, but when you see the Seahawks take an inside linebacker 1 pick before you and your guy, just what's the feeling when your guy's still sitting there?
Well, the guy they took was a great player. I think this year there were 3 really good inside linebackers, and fortunately we got one of those 3 guys. So, we're excited. I mean, we got a guy that we think is great, a great player. You hold your breath with every single pick. Many years we've lost out on a guy right before we pick. And so this year was nice just to have a guy fall to us. It wasn't like we had a lot of trade opportunities either. The guy just fell to us. The phone wasn't ringing very much, and we got a really good football player.
Hey, Eric, Jonas again. I know you guys do all kinds of preparation, and one of those things is just, kind of running your own mock draft simulations. Can you say how, I guess whether you guys expected this, or was this a common outcome in those simulations to have Queen available at 28?
I thought we'd have one of two guys. I thought we'd get one of two guys, and it worked out for us. So I mean, you never know. I mean, this was an unusual draft. This draft was more like some of the drafts in the early, mid 1990s. I think the draft has changed a lot because of reporting and the internet and the information and different things. This draft seems to be just a little bit less predictable. Volatility, when that happens, I think we think it's a great opportunity for us. We trust ourselves in the process. We trust our scouts and our coaches. I think we've got great evaluators, and I think we have an advantage because we have a staff of coaches that do a really good job of explaining exactly the type of players that they're looking for. And I think as a scouting staff, we're aligned with our coaches. We've had that continuity thanks to Steve and John and Ozzie. And so I think we're very much aligned, and that's going to be something that I think gives us an advantage moving forward over the next 2 days.
Is that it?
Hey, John, real quick, is that Gretchen or Allison with the haircut for you?
Ingrid or Allison.
Excuse me.
It was, there was definitely, thanks. You like it nice and tight, right?
Sharp.
It's nice that they did. That's nice and tight. So they took care of me. I tried to do it myself. Eric saw the results of that when I was taking a walk one day, I think, and sent me back in for more work. I took a little too much off the back, and they got it cleaned up, and then we did okay. Thanks.
All right, thanks, guys. Media, if you will hold on, we're going to put you in the holding room, and we will have Patrick on here in a couple minutes.